Every minute, someone is killed by a firearm globally. Behind that grim statistic lies a shadow economy worth an estimated $6 billion a year. We are talking about the illegal arms trade. It is a market that thrives on instability, secrecy, and the fundamental desperation of human conflict. This is not just a business of shadows, it is a global infrastructure built on broken laws and diverted shipments. To understand the economics of illegal guns, you have to follow the flow. Most illicit weapons don't start as illegal. They begin their lives in the pristine armories of legitimate nation-states. They are legally produced by defense contractors in countries like the United States, Russia, China, and France. They are sold through government-to-government contracts. Then the diversion begins. Corruption is the grease in the gears. A government official in a war-torn state signs an end-user certificate, promising the weapons are for national defense. Instead, they are sold to the highest bidder on the black market the moment they clear customs. Once those serial numbers are filed off, the weapon enters a permanent state of untraceability. Consider the AK-47. Since its inception in 1947, over 100 million units have been produced. It is the gold standard of the illicit trade because it is cheap, durable, and ubiquitous. A rifle that costs $300 to manufacture can be sold for $3,000 in a conflict zone. That is a tenfold markup on human suffering. The economics are driven by the principle of supply and demand, but with a gruesome twist. In a standard market, supply meets demand. In the illegal arms trade, the supply often creates the demand. By flooding a region with cheap, small arms, traffickers accelerate cycles of violence that make state building impossible. An unstable region is a permanent client state for more weapons. It is a perfect, self-sustaining loop of carnage. But how does the money move? You cannot exactly wire transfer millions of dollars for a crate of machine guns through a local bank. The trade relies on shell companies and trade-based money laundering. A trafficker might set up a front company that ostensibly trades in agricultural goods or textiles. They over-invoice these legal shipments to move the arms money across borders, hidden inside legitimate commercial traffic. This is why international ports are the most critical nodes in the network. If you control a port, you control the pipeline. Victor Boot, often dubbed the Merchant of Death, mastered this craft in the 1990s. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, millions of tons of military hardware were left unguarded. Boot built an empire using a fleet of aging cargo planes, exploiting legal loopholes in aviation registries to move weapons from post-Soviet stockpiles to rebel groups in Africa and Afghanistan. He exploited the fact that international law is a patchwork of domestic regulations. When one country tightened its borders, he simply re-registered his planes in another. The reality today is even more decentralized. The rise of the dark web has digitized the arms trade. Encrypted messaging apps allow buyers and sellers to negotiate without ever meeting. Payments are settled in cryptocurrency, bypassing the scrutiny of international banking regulations. You can now order components for ghost guns, firearms with no serial numbers, and have them shipped in pieces across international borders, labeled as simple machine parts. Government regulation is struggling to keep pace. The United Nations Arms Trade Treaty, which entered into force in 2014, was designed to stop these diversions. It requires countries to assess the risk that weapons might be used for human rights abuses before authorizing a sale. But the treaty lacks an enforcement mechanism. It relies entirely on the good faith of signatory nations. When a superpower chooses to ignore the treaty to bolster a proxy ally, the framework crumbles. The economic impact isn't just measured in the price of a rifle, it is measured in the lost development of entire nations. When a country spends 20% of its GDP on weapons instead of schools, hospitals, or infrastructure, it locks itself into a cycle of poverty. The illicit arms trade is an extractive industry. It leaches the wealth of struggling nations and funnels it into the offshore bank accounts of arms brokers and corrupt kleptocrats. We are seeing a shift toward localized production as well. 3D printing technology is changing the calculus. Why spend thousands smuggling a rifle when you can print a functional receiver in your basement? We are moving into an era where the hardware of war is becoming information, and information is much harder to regulate than a crate of steel on a cargo ship. There is also the issue of surplus. When Western powers exit a conflict, they rarely take all their equipment with them. In the rapid withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, billions of dollars worth of equipment was left behind. It didn't just vanish, it entered the regional black market. The sudden influx of high-end night vision gear, encrypted radios, and sophisticated small arms destabilized the surrounding region, fueling new insurgencies. The dark economics of this trade are rarely debated in the halls of power because the trade is too deeply tied to national interests. Many states see the illicit trade as a useful tool of foreign policy. If you want to support a rebel group without declaring war, you don't send your own army. You facilitate the private sale of weapons through the black market. It provides the perfect layer of plausible deniability. This makes the trade incredibly resilient. As long as there is a geopolitical advantage to be gained by arming non-state actors, and as long as corruption allows for the siphoning of military stock, the market will thrive. We are left with a fundamental contradiction. We live in a world where global trade is more integrated than ever, where we can track a package of electronics from a factory in China to a doorstep in London with pinpoint accuracy. Yet millions of lethal weapons disappear into the ether every year, their paths obscured by a veil of shell companies and complicit officials. The trade is not a flaw in the system, it is a feature. It is a dark, profitable shadow that follows the light of geopolitical ambition. Until the global community treats arms trafficking with the same severity as nuclear proliferation, the black market will continue to be the most reliable industry on the planet. We have to ask ourselves, are we okay with a world where the most dangerous commodities on Earth move more freely than the people they are designed to destroy? Or is the profit simply too high to stop the machines?